is crazy.
Well, can I just say something to you lot? Can I just say how really proud I am of all of you? Neil, you know I've known you for how long?
Oh, mate, do I hire closers?
Oh, right. So, Lily, if you want to know how I know Neil, I was desperate for a job a few years back, and I sent him a message on LinkedIn, this beautiful platform that we're using. This beautiful platform that we're using now. Neil, what was my opening statement to you in a random message? Never known him before. What was it?
Never met. Wouldn't know you from a bar of soap, and it was, I hear you're looking for closers.
and I got the job.
Oh my gosh!
And do you know what, Lily? Here's hunger, right? This is what hunger does. Oh, by the way, you're all live. Say hi. Say hello. This is what hunger does, Lily. When you're really desperate for a job, you'll do anything to get that job, right? The person that also went for the job had just closed $1 million deal. Oh no, did he get $1 million commission check or something, Neil?
Yeah, there was a bit of a history there that demonstrated a lack of hunger.
Yes, and so the choice was: do you hire the guy that's really successful that's got no hunger, or the guy that's really successful that's needs a job? And it was a bit of a no-brainer. And I think what was the company called, Neil? It was
a technology startup out in New Zealand called Endace.
That's it, yeah. And they were a cool company, and we sold the largest ever trading monitoring solution to the stock exchange, to Tim Thurman and all those guys. How good! I mean, he drank so much beer. Oh my god. Anyway, Neil, thanks for joining us. Because hold on, let me just pull up these messages to see if I can get any messages. I'm hoping we've got a few people on the line, because I think what you're doing, by the way, is remarkable. I think what you've done in taking the leap out of the corporate world and into working for yourself is transformational, and it's inspiring, because there are very few people that have the balls to be able to do what you've done, to leave a really successful career and go and jump into something that's got purpose and passion behind it. And the reason I love what you're doing is because we're aligned in the same way that we want to contribute and make a difference to the world, and make that difference doing what we love to do, which is helping people and making that contribution. One of my favorite rappers. I keep coming back to the word rap because your business is all about the Reconciliation Action Plan, and every time I think about the Reconciliation Action Plan, I just think about rappers. So I think about Nipsey Hussle, who's one of my favorite rappers. He's dead now; he got shot, but he was always talking about getting rid of doubt. And of course, when you take that leap from having a corporate safe job to working for yourself, you've got a lot of doubt in your mind, and one of the first things that you have to do is get rid of that doubt. And I know you've done that. So I think what I love is for you to explain what Bidem does, because when you first told me about the whole Bidem business and what it stands for, and then told me about the abilities to actually circumnavigate procurement processes and make things happen quicker, I thought that for me was just a bit of a no-brainer as why you wouldn't get involved in something like this that not only shortens a sales cycle, but also makes a contributable difference back to society.
No, thanks, Carl, and thanks, Lily. That's it's kind of you, mate. And as you know, we're as passionate about what you guys are doing over there. So maybe let me take you through a little bit of a story about the genesis of Bidem and what we observed, and essentially I think that the root of all businesses is what problem you're trying to solve, and therefore, to your point, you really find the purpose of the business. So I'll take you right back to the story. We were watching it was the night the Wallabies were playing the Pumas. And if you're not a rugby tragic, apologies, I am. And we were talking about the fact that Kurtley Beale had just been picked to play for the Wallabies. And if you know the position that Kurtley plays, man, you need to be able to tackle. and we were having a whinge the fact that Kirtley had been picked and he couldn't tackle, and we quickly rattled off all the other guys in league and union that could tackle, like Jonathan Thurston, Sammy Thaiday, Mark Ella back in his day. The common thread quickly surfaced that all these men, apart from being excellent in their chosen field of sport, were also Indigenous men. So we then, as things often do over a couple of glasses of red wine, we started to talk about other industries. But I remember the night vividly because for me it was the genesis of what we put together, and the conversation quickly turned to our industry in security and ICT. There was about 100 years of tenure around the table this night having this conversation. Not one of us could reference an Indigenous boy or girl in any capacity of IT that would ever work with. And for a non-Indigenous man and clearly a non-native, that really struck a chord with me. And I felt moved and passionate about trying to positively change that. So we then, Philip Jenkinson and I, one of my business partners, we done a road trip down to Canberra, and given my background and relationships in federal and state government, we started to really just kind of socialise this observation of why are there no First Nations people in our sector, and then start to understand that observation deeper, why, and then how do we start to break down some of the barriers that do drive more inclusion and diversity. So we spent about a week down in Canberra talking to some ministerial people, talking to other CISOs, and that's when we first came across I guess the start of federal government's answer to some of this, which was a mandated framework to encourage Indigenous businesses to participate in the Commonwealth government supply chain, known today as the Indigenous Procurement Policy. And if you look into what that policy is, it's a mandated framework that says if you're Department of Health and Human Services and you are looking to procure any goods and services, you are mandated to look at Indigenous procurement first and foremost, and then you can go and satisfy that requirement outside of Indigenous capability.
So that's mandated. Let's be clear. That's the federal and state governments. They say you must first look at Indigenous. Is that what they mandate that?
Mandated, yeah.
Right.
So we looked at that and thought, well, they're great. There's a stimulus in terms of a policy that creates economic independence and opportunity for Indigenous businesses to prosper. We then came back up to Queensland and regrouped as a board and started to go, well, it still doesn't answer the question around why are there no Indigenous people participating in our sector today, ICT and cyber. So we spent some time in remote communities and really started to break down what those barriers to entry were. And more importantly, through the creation of BADEM, some of those barriers that we could start to positively affect through being innovative. And as you can imagine, Carl and Lily, that there's many barriers to entry for these First Nations people to get into our sector. But the two that stood out for us were financial and educational. And I'll break those down for you. As a cybersecurity industry, we pay a lot of weight and attention to industry certifications. Things like CISM and CRISC and these C-letter acronyms that just go on and on, that are industry recognised, that hold a lot of weight, but also come at quite a financial burden to any individual that wants to go through them. So we thought, well, if we created a business model that allowed BADEM to fund those certifications, again, all we're trying to do here is uplift capability so that they become then relevant for employment in our sector. That being one. The other one that we felt we could positively impact was social. Carl, for you and I that have been in the industry for many years, we have the ability to pick up the phone to Andrew Webster, to pick up the phone to to a head of security at a financial services organization. So to put it in summary, the genesis of what we've created is Baydam Solutions is a certified, federally certified Supply Nation cybersecurity consultancy. But what we're doing differently is through the success of our commerce by delivering security outcomes today to state, federal, and local government, we're taking a percentage of that profit or commerce generated, and we're using that explicitly to uplift capability in our sector. No government grants, no external funding. This is all self-generated effort. So when I sit in front of a CIO or a CISO and tell the story and get interrupted quite early about, great, how can we help? It will give us an opportunity to demonstrate that we can commercially and technically deliver something that's fit for purpose in your organization. And then what we're doing with the commerce around uplifting that capability is the difference. It is the opportunity for us to look back in 5 or 10 years time and hand on heart say Baydam had a positive part to play in putting 40 or 50 First Nations people back in the sector.
It's so beautiful, Neil. And I spoke about this on, I think it was Sunday with Frisco. We were talking about, I grew up with a Jamaican family, right? So I keep thinking in Jamaican terms. Sometimes I get these phrases that my mum used to say, things like one cork full basket, which basically means bit by bit, you fill the basket full of cocos, right? What you're doing, I mean, it sounds one cork full basket, but what happens basically is you turn around in 2 years' time and you've got 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 people that you've elevated up out of their communities into the security world from the Aboriginal culture. That's a massive impact. But it's not going to happen like a big bang overnight. It's going to be one cocoa. It's going to overnight.
Absolutely, mate. It's a big audacious journey in front of us. We love a challenge. We love the fight. But you're absolutely right. It's a process over time. I remember sitting around about early last year. We're in front of a government department and got asked the question around how many Indigenous analysts do you have in your SOC? And for those of you that don't know what a SOC is, Security Operations Center, it's often a piece of infrastructure that partners or organizations invest in when they get a certain level of maturity. And just by definition of being able to answer that question around, well, one, we don't have a SOC, and two, if we did, it wouldn't be full today of Indigenous analysts, because indeed that's the problem that we've identified and we're trying to fix over time. So yeah, it's a great challenge, Carl. It's we're making progress daily, and I think like back to Meet Magic and back to the stuff that you and Lily are doing. If you're very, very crystal clear on the problem you're trying to solve and the purpose of the business, every day is an absolute joy to be contributing towards that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's inspiration, and it's inspiration that gets you up at. I often wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just excited. Even still today, jumping out of bed at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and just can't sleep because there's so much on my mind I want to do that's exciting. It's not a motivation doesn't do that. Motivation can't give you that same feeling. It's only when you get inspired by what you're doing that you. And I think what you're doing is ridiculous. It's like you wake up. It's like you wake up in the morning and you've got a customer that's really happy with what you've done for them, and you get an email from them. I know Lily's had a couple of emails from execs this week, which it's just all it takes is one exec to say, "Hey, Lily, who was it? Talk about it. Go on, yeah, I'll let you."
I think I have it in front of me. I got an email from Lavinia Rorinka, who is she's like the head of lean transformation at Westpac. I just emailed her after her meeting, and I was like, oh, just checking in. Like, I just wanted to make sure everything went well. Let me know if there's anything I can do to like better your experience with Meet Magic. And she just came back and she was like, thank you so much for organizing. That meeting was a very positive experience, and that she's happy to help in the future. Which it's literally those emails that like keep me going, because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing something right. Let's
It's
keep going.
beautiful.
Let's get some more execs involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really magical.
So Neil, you know, when you jump off the cliff, off the corporate cliff, and you jump into working for yourself, like you have done at Badem, those little wins that you get really do make a difference, right?
Absolutely. I think you know, to Lily's point, when you have and we, like you know, we're so passionate about the cause. We have a receptive audience. So when we're aligning the outcomes of what we can drive for a client, not only to commerce and not only to cyber, but to reconciliation. And it's not just state or federal government that take this stuff seriously. As you're starting to see, most of the ASX 100 have what we refer to as a structured reconciliation action plan, which is a corporate framework that sits at a board level, aligns and gets reported on with the annual general report, and has got KPIs and deliverables and owners and accountability right through it about how, for example, Bank of Queensland are gonna drive reconciliation across their business. It's not all about employment and procurement. It's cultural awareness. It's starting every board meeting with a welcome to country or an acknowledgement of country. It's employee diversity. It is procurement and opportunities for Indigenous businesses to participate. So it's beautiful when we get that opportunity to engage at a level where we know cyber risk and cyber security is a board level conversation. But you couple that with reconciliation, and it's a very, very welcome discussion.
Yeah, what's it done to the sales cycle? Because I know we talk a lot about this, and often the red tape that's associated with dealing with government businesses, or whether it's state or federal, that whole procurement process is a nightmare that most people avoid like the plague because it's just too long and laborious. What has that reconciliation action plan, or the IPP, what has it done to the procurement cycles?
Well, down in federal government, I mean, for anybody that's listening and that's done business down in federal government will know that it's often ridiculed with process and that will continue. But the Indigenous procurement policy has allowed any federal government department to go through a process where once a budget has been defined and a technology or a piece of procurement has been identified, instead of going to open market, the one of the key purposes of the IPP is it encourages Indigenous participation first. So yeah, we have seen and we have a lot of customers down in Canberra today that we're successfully delivering security outcomes to right across all parts of their infrastructure that have have gone through a technical selection process, define the control that they want to acquire, and often, as we know, speed and cybersecurity go hand in hand. And we have to move fast, and certainly been on the receiving end of some procurement processes that have been days, which has been fantastic outcome for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic outcome for the client that's needing to protect critical assets, citizen information, and staff data.
Hey, so I'm just looking at some of the comments that are popping up, and Anthony Scott's with us. Thanks, Anthony. Good to see you, mate. And I know I see Glenn from Airlock's popped up and gave us a bit of a plug, which is brilliant. I know that you and the guys at Airlock have been doing quite a bit of work just lately, and we've opened a few doors for you, which has been really helpful. And Glenn's experience is up on the screen if everyone wants to watch it. What's been your experience, Neil?
With Airlock or Meet Magic or both?
With the Meet Magic meetings that you've had.
Oh, mate, for us, it's been absolutely outstanding. It's been, as you know, Carl, we got together as a board just at the tail end of middle of March to say, well, as a growing, thriving thriving, hungry in startup, essentially 18 months old. How do we, through these tough times, remain relevant, keep the conversations happening? And for us, the Meet Magic platform has been absolutely invaluable to be able to, continue those C-level conversations with the support of our vendor community. Airlock obviously being a critical part of that security control that is an absolute must-have for every state and federal government department at the moment. Such a critical job that they're doing to keep government departments and enterprise secure. Absolutely positive experience with the work that we've done and continue to do with yourself and Lily and the team.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's fabulous to hear.
Yeah, and maybe you want to give us a bit of an overview about that shirt you're wearing, mate, because it's it reminds me of, it's blue. It's New South Wales colours, but I'm surprised there's no maroon in there.
Up in Queensland, you may get a rap for saying that. But yeah, look, thanks for asking. That the shirt is a visual representation of the TI flag. When you think about when you think about the Indigenous population, that is indeed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island. So if we look at the Aboriginal and TI population, it represents about 3% of the Australian population. The TI is the underrepresented of the underrepresented. So on the shirt here, well, first and foremost, Baydam is the Torres Strait Island word for shark. It's also their totem animal. Just above the Baydam here, we have the Baydam constellation, which back several thousand years ago, the people in the Torres Strait used to use the constellation as a navigation point before Google Maps and GPS. And if the constellation was high in the sky, they knew it was shark breeding season, so it was time to keep out the water. If the Baydam constellation was low in the sky, it was time to forage the land for food. The shirt, the white on the shirt represents peace. The dark blue and the light blue represent the oceans and streams. The green is the land, and the little black stars just around the constellation are the Indigenous people.
Really quite remarkable. And when we talk about this a little bit sometimes about the win-win-win, and then there's an extra fourth win on top of this, because when Baydam and companies like Airlock come together and get meetings through Meet Magic, there's this quadruple whammy almost happening, because you guys get access into new vendors, into new conversations with the C-suite. But then if a deal is done, then there's a percentage of the profit that goes to help Indigenous people skill up in cybersecurity, and there's also funds being delivered off to help sick kids at the same time. So you look at the impact that just one meeting could potentially have. It's just quite remarkable. I mean, I don't know why every business or every business meeting hasn't got some sort of impact. Just like there's a mandated requirement for government to put business through Indigenous companies, we should have a mandated policy that every business meeting has to have some form of impact, because that for me is just a beautiful outcome for everybody.
Yeah, it's mate, absolutely, and it's we're fortunate, Carl, that the great support that we've had through our vendor community to keep business meetings at a very senior level continuing. The common thread there is obviously that a lot of those are ASX 100 listed. A lot of those have a reconciliation action plan. So by definition, our target market in terms of conversations that we want to have and outcomes that we want to drive are completely aligned to the executives that you are fortunate enough to have brought onto the platform.
So Lily, this is really beautiful, because we could literally reach out to all of the CISOs in those top ASX listed companies and say, hey, by taking a meeting for good, you're not only going to help potentially sick kids. Well, you're definitely going to help sick kids, because there's going to be an impact there. But if one of the partners that Baydam brings to the table if they do a deal, it's actually going to help with their reconciliation action plan, which they're mandated and obligated to address, which is it's helping them, literally helping them achieve their KPIs. Which is a beautiful outcome.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
Yeah, and we, Carl, we one thing that Philip and I and Jack and the team talked about last year is, that reconciliation is obviously fit for purpose for any sized organisation. And one thing we wanted to do quite boldly last year was in fact launch our own wrap. So Badem has launched in July last year, launched its own wrap, which is currently being reviewed by Reconciliation Australia, and lead by example. So we will be like those organisations that have different levels of maturity of reconciliation across their business. We will be driving outcomes and be held accountable to wrap outcomes as Badem. So we're very proud of that, and we're leading by example, even as young as we are in the marketplace.
It's beautiful. Okay, so I was talking to Andrew Madazak earlier, and he reckons we should use the phrase "meetings for good is here for good." So I've just put it on the bottom of the screen. So if you're a cybersecurity executive, and your job is to protect the company that you're working for, and you need some help, you can get a hold of us or get hold of Neil at Badem Solutions anyhow you want to, or you can register on this meetingforgood.org.au website, and that will tell us that you're an executive that wants to pledge some time, and we can then connect you directly with Ian, with Neil and the Badem team, and away you go. It's that simple. It's not that difficult. And I know Shane Barr's watching, so my good mate Shane Barr, he's the epitome of a Luddite, and Shane, we know you are. We love you. So I want to get the Badem guys in front of Shane, because Shane needs to learn about cybersecurity. I want him to be completely competent on how to address his growing company. He has a company called Transformed, and it's growing incrementally very fast. There's lots of customers that are coming to them because they solve the problems around customer experience, and make that whole journey, that when a customer lands on your website, makes that journey really much more easy for the customer. And I just know that a lot of those customers that are coming to Shane have security issues. So I'd love it when those customers come to Shane, he can be trained by Badem on how to speak cybersecurity. I tell you what, if you can make that happen, I'll pay you $1 million. Lily, give us an update on the numbers, because this week we're going to hit a massive milestone, and we're going to crack 200 execs that have signed on. That is 200 executives like the CISOs, CTOs who have signed on for the meetingforgood.org.au website. They've signed on there, and we've got something almost like 700 meetings that are available for any vendor that wants to go and have a meeting with them. We can do it. So where are we up to, Lily?
Yeah, today we are up to 194 executives registered. We have 678 meetings that are available for purchase on our website, which is insane. 678 conversations that can be had. That's insane. And 12,292 kids that kids will be helped when these meetings are held.
That's incredible.
And that's not even is that including the amount that we've already helped, or not including?
Probably all up once all those meetings have taken place. Yeah. So
which is just absolutely incredible.
Neil, I think for you guys at Badem, keep living the dream and keep that vision really, really clear in your head, because I know that your thoughts literally become your reality. That Nipsey Hussle always talks about thoughts becoming your words, and your words becoming your actions. But without that vision and without that dream, without it being clear, it's just not going to happen. And Nipsey always says you got to stick to the script, and that's for me exactly what you're doing. You've jumped off the cliff, you're sticking to the script, and it's going to happen for you. You've got. I don't think having a short-term vision is going to give you anything, and I think what you're doing now is nothing short of long-term, and it's a beautiful outcome that's going to be happen. We're going to be realized, I think, once you get there.
Mate, we have a little bit of a discussion internally, and I remember back last year we were sat in front of the whole security team at a very big bank down in Melbourne, and we were telling the story, and we said, well, what we aspire to is we want to create the first JT of IT, and everyone around the table looked at us, and Philip and I thought we lost fact for a minute that we were in Melbourne. He said, well, we want to create the first Adam Goods of IT. Oh, and there was lots of acknowledgement and smiles. So, yeah, the first JT of IT, that wholesome, upright, clean, well-respected role model figure that JT is today in technology. And yeah, we talk about creating the first, almost that first Indigenous CISO of a federal government department is an aspiration that we are.
How good would that be? I mean, right now, how would you go and look for them? Where would you go looking for an Indigenous CISO today?
Well, mate, that's it's a good question. And often when we tell the story, a question that we get asked a lot is, well, if you've made the observation there is no representation today, where do you start? And we're fortunate to have some very unique link. Obviously, we're talking to the universities, but in fact, if you talk to ANU or RMIT or QUT up here, they're all faced with the same challenge, that they don't have the intake from Indigenous boys and girls. Conversely, if we find an Indigenous boy or girl that's come out of university, for us, that's a big win, because they've already broken down some significant barriers, being 4 years out of community, have shown the grit to get through a university degree. But we're working with an organisation up here in Queensland called QuatSIF. QuatSIF are a beautiful organisation that it's Queensland and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Investment Fund. And what QuatSIF do and have done over the last 7 years is they fund Indigenous scholarships, public, private, non-denominational, everything from kindy to year 12. So if you're in your final year of law and you're Indigenous student and you're under financial duress, don't drop out. QuatSIF will step in and see you through. So we started working with QuatSIF last year to say, well, look, of interest to us, can you look at the Indigenous scholarships you've given out and out over Queensland? Can you give us an idea of how many kids have studied STEM that are either in their first year out or final year? So we're currently working with about 147 Indigenous boys and girls across Queensland to not pitch to them as BADEM, but through that trusted source of QuatSIF, start to communicate to these kids and families, if there is less interest in sport and a more interest in coding, then start to position what a career in cyber could look like and help them create that pathway.
So good, Neil. So good. I've just got goose pimples, mate, because it's just beautiful. Literally, that's legacy and impact, and that's purpose. Yeah. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning, and I really love it. So hats off to you guys. I think we're done. 33 minutes, Lily. We nailed it. See, I told you, this is like water off a duck's back now, Doc. This is just too easy.
It is indeed. Thank you so much, Neil. It was amazing to hear about BADEM and just the amazing stuff that you guys are doing, and we're so grateful to be involved and be a part of that.
And if your name's Fred Thiel or whatever other CISO you are out there, meetingforgood.org.au is where you need to put your details, and we can sign you up and connect you with companies like BADEM that can go and make a bloody impact. When it's nothing of your time. It's 45 minutes in front of your laptop. That's it. And the impact you're going to have could quite possibly just replicate and ripple for the next 100 years, which is ridiculous to think.
Yeah, it's massive.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Carl.
Literally.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.